Legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from.
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
We struggled, we had to strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
Hello everyone and welcome to Global TV. This is Suyag Mofwebe live in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, welcoming you very specially to Global Morning, where we get to talk about salient issues around the economy, politics, and where we are today as a country. Basically, it's a Friday, TGIF, especially for those who have had particularly a very demanding week with all of the pressure and tension and the realities we have to grapple with on a daily basis. So while we're waiting for that to kick in, pretty much later today, I want to seize this opportunity to have conversations around very salient issues. So many eventful happenings across the week. Yesterday, for example, the 127th session of the Nigerian Economic Council, consisting of the governors and with the vice president as the chairperson, met, and several key issues were deliberated on during that session, as is always the case. But one highlight for me, and I'm sure that also could be very pivotal for many people, especially those who very frantically follows the developments in this country, is agriculture. The vice president says to the governors they should all go back to their respective states as sub-nationals to drive agricultural development. But that in itself is bigger than just having a conversation during a once-in-a-while session, as I'd like to call it. Because you go to different states today, you see all of the potentialities there with regards to agriculture. You want to talk about the arable land, you want to talk about the people, you want to talk about several opportunities within the agric space. But the question is, how many governors as of today in Nigeria, whether in the north, in the east, in the west, or in the south, who can say deliberately driving policies that will help to accelerate growth, accelerate developments, and put money in the pockets of these states? We're not so sure of that. Yes, no doubt we're seeing a handful of governors, just a pocket of them, trying to even attract some form of foreign direct investment into their states. They're trying to leverage the opportunities that they see to ensure that they get agriculture as a very critical state, as if you like, sector of the ground. But the question is, to what extent are those efforts paying off? There is the argument that some of these governors probably already know that there's a guarantee of some money coming from the FAC every other month, that is from the Federation account. So they just know that whatever happens, I mean, worst case scenario, something will come from the center. However, agriculture, it has been argued severally that it is supposed to be the mainstay for Nigeria, not even oil, because first, it is very sustainable, all right, with little or no damage to the environment, unlike oil, where you have to drill and prospect. And I mean, look at all of the impacts we see now in terms of the environment. And then, of course, this is a time where the world has to come face to face with the realities of climate change. So agriculture is the way to go, no doubt about that. But how much of sincerity of purpose is government bringing to the table? How much of long-term vision does government have, top to bottom and across board? Very important. How much are we training our people with regards to manpower? The average young person in Nigeria today still sees agriculture as that practice where you have to take old school tools, if you like, all right, to the farm. Hoes and diggers and cutlasses and shovels and spades and all of that, just to be able to farm. But the world has long moved past that. Why are we still, for the most part, dealing with subsistence farming instead of going industrial with our agriculture? Look at the initiatives that government has put in place over the years, especially at the federal level. Look at the Anchor Boras program, for instance. Up until this point, we're still having that otherwise laudable initiative being dogged with controversies and even very strong allegations of fraud. Enough said. We're going to take a break at this point. We have papers for you in a few minutes. My colleague Anthony Momodu will join me here to look at the papers. But there's a bigger conversation in front of us this morning. The idea that the federal government is now seriously working on to bring in to be able to drive revenue, leveraging expatriates in Nigeria. It sounds something novel, but some people have said, well, there's nothing really new about it, unless, of course, this government under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu is trying to do something a bit disruptive with regards to the method, the approach, and the entire framework that will drive this objective. We'll have those details for you on the show this morning. I'll be joined by someone who is not only passionate about seeing the Nigeria that works, but he also has some confidence that if the right things are done, if we get the right hands on board, this will pay off big time for Nigeria. Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle, the ASU strike.
Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
the legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle, the ASU strike.
Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
Let's turn to the papers. Turns out we're starting off with the Nigerian Tribune this promising Friday. Let's see the big story right on the front page of it. It says states FCT OFG 1.7 trillion naira in budget support facility. As a writer there that reads, NEC rejects setting up of National Flood Management Council. What are their reasons for that? You'll find details on page 2 of today's Nigerian Tribune. But above the nameplate of the Tribune, we have 3 headlines there. The first, top left corner, says Lagos impounds 15 petroleum tankers for parking on Port Access Road. And then the second with a picture of the governor of Kogi State, Governor Bello. It says Kogi freezes state's LG accounts. That story has its details on page 7. There have been insinuations as to why that is. We'll talk to you about those in a moment. Another picture, another story there has a picture of the governor of Nasarawa State who got some sort of reprieve yesterday. Appeal Court reverses tribunal judgment sacking Governor Sule. Upholds Inuwa's re-election. That's Inuwa, the governor of Gombe State now. Incidentally, I'm joined by my colleague on the show this morning. Together, we're going to look at the papers for you. Anthony Momodu, thank you for coming to do this on short notice.
Yeah, always a pleasure to be here.
I get it. All right, so we have the Tribune paper here. And there's this story just above the nameplate saying Kogi freezes state LG accounts. I mean, one would have thought for a state where the governor is an APC member, I mean, you have an APC governor, it's an APC state, as they say, and the man who has been declared winner by INEC is also of the APC. Yet the governor goes ahead to freeze the accounts of both the state and local governments. I mean, you are in Nigeria and you also follow the elections in these 3 states during the off-cycle elections. What could be the reason for this? I mean, it's supposed to be an APC to APC transition.
Yeah, it's a very surprising story. When it broke last night, I guess I was one of the few, or one of the Nigerians that saw that story when immediately it broke. It was very, very surprising. The question you asked, knowing fully whether Ododo was, Osman Odo was single-handedly picked by Yahaya Bello.
You mean he was anointed?
The anointed son. So you expected that everything should go, you know, free flow. But it means something is amiss already. Even before his inauguration, something is amiss. And we saw something like that play out in Rivers State. And
as Wike was leaving office?
Leaving office. And so I think there must be a very strong reason why Yahaya Bello would take such a move. Because ordinarily we expect that he would take a move that would favor Usman Ododo. So, or probably he has gotten information that some of his commissioners or contractors are angling to be paid before he leaves office. So it's a very, very disturbing occurrence. But it goes to tell us that something is definitely not all good with Kogi State as regards him freezing their account. But in the coming hours, we hope to get the full details why he decided to make that move. But obviously, it means there's something, a cover-up. Don't be surprised in coming days or weeks, we might get to see offices fire outbreak in some ministries or agencies.
We hope that doesn't happen.
Because that's what we always see, or probably maybe now it's going to be an elephant swallowing.
We don't have that. You only have snake and monkey.
Yeah,
so but you want to add elephant to the list.
Who knows? Because because the statement didn't come out to say this was the exact reasons why the state governor decided to freeze that. So, but the big question is it because he's about to leave office? Does it have anything to do with the security vote? Does it have anything to do with the FAC allocation released recently? It's shared by the federal government, the state, and local government. Is that why he's freezing it? It's a very big question that only Yahaya Bello can answer because the government didn't give fine details as to why he decided to stop that.
So you're saying even people of the state where he governs, they are also at crossroads as to why the governor did this? And
it's very unusual. We've never had such a thing, especially knowing fully well that the incoming government is also an APC-led government. So there's a big...
Because there have been insinuations in some quarters, of course, this is not something we have verified, that it's probably not unconnected with the fact that there are people in key positions in Governor Yahaya Bello's government who didn't perform during the election. So it's a sort of vendetta move. We don't know how true that is, but we are more concerned about how this impacts one way or another the people of the states and the ongoing projects. Kogi State has been in the news for too many wrong reasons in the last couple of years. And we believe as Nigerians that if there's any time to, if you like, reverse that impression, if there's any time to do better, do right by the state and the great people of that state, it should be now that you're looking at the transition in front of you. But we hope the governor finds the required wisdom and the guidance to do the right thing as he leaves office, because legacy matters. Legacy even stretches beyond the infrastructure you're living, the schools you've built and all of that. It goes to even the heart of your name, your person, and the humanity that you brought.
I think if he couldn't do it for the years he was in office, I don't think this short period is enough for him to change.
So you're saying the governor bungled his chance?
Yeah, he obviously he did. And the fact that he also anointed Usman Ododo and made sure he won the elections by his incumbency support. And for the fact that he also went ahead to say he was going to sack, there was a specific local government chairman who he said because he didn't do well, he was going to be kicked out. That shows the level of desperate for him to want to see that Ododo did win. And also, there's also this school of thought that probably we know that in government circles, there are certain people who do biddings on behalf of the government, either knowingly or unknowingly, and say, okay, give us X amount of money, we're going to get this contract out for you, you're going to get payment for whatever contract you have done for the government. And so there's also some school of thought. I believe that that's one of the reasons the governor has decided to take that move, because probably contractors, some politicians are already lobbying or already to say, okay, this and this and this. And so probably he is also trying to stop monies from circulating. He wants to be in charge.
But as we know, Ododo just doesn't have access to the state
treasury. Yeah, he doesn't, but already knowing that
he gets inaugurated.
Yes, knowing fully well that he's going to be the man calling the shots going forward. Definitely lobbies are already circling around him to say.
So for some people, Ododo is already the governor.
He's already
in principle.
In principle, obviously. Governor-elect.
Yeah, and that's powerful, isn't it? Labour Party factions clash in courts over suit against Imo governorship candidates. Yesterday we were told, some news story, that the governorship candidate of the Labour Party in the just concluded Imo State election would be leading some members of his party, his supporters for the most part, to INEC headquarters here in Abuja to protest. We're not so sure how that turned out, but we know for a fact that INEC had declared the incumbent governor, Hope Uzodimma, the winner of that election. So the constitution is very clear what happens going forward. You go to courts. However, for people who want to demonstrate, there's already a standard operating procedure for that in terms of you going on peaceful demonstration. Is a right that's guaranteed by laws, by our laws and even international treaties. But we hope nobody hijacks this for selfish interest or for some sinister motives. Okay, terrorism, FG orders probe of misconduct by correctional officers. You find details of the story on page 22 of today's Tribune. The headline is on the front page, left end. Escalating costs of medications, the worrisome, risky situation in Nigeria. But there's one here I'd like us to look at. It says, Marine and Blue Economy heads of critical agencies sign performance bond with Oyetola. Lalong receives certificate of return as senator-elect for Plateau South. I need to talk to you about this, Tony. Lalong had been the governor of that state. Then, of course, he ran to be a senator, having done 8 years in office, and then he lost by INEC's declaration. And then, of course, the matter moved to court, as is often the case in Nigeria. And in between, he had already been appointed by President Bola Tinubu, and by 21st of August, inaugurated as Minister of Labour. That appointment itself raised a lot of dust, because for people who very closely follow the politics and leadership of Plateau, especially under former Governor Lalong, had said, look, you had issues that are labor-related, very deep-rooted issues while you were governor. In fact, you left with a backlog of salaries. I don't follow, I'm not so sure if I have an idea how true that is, but people have said you were owing salaries as of when you left office as governor, and now the president makes you the Labour Minister, which means you'll be, as it were, the poster boy of the federal government where labor relations are discussed. So they said on the basis of that, he was not competent, not eminently qualified, as they say, to be Labour Minister. Today we understand that the courts has reversed the declaration of INEC, now declaring him as the senator who had won that senatorial district in his state. In fact, INEC has even now issued him a certificate of return.
Obviously, this puts INEC and the judiciary in more bad light, and it makes Nigerians, yes, it makes Nigerians even doubt and not trust the process more, because it's obvious that because he's in the ruling party, everything goes to his favor. You're very right.
But there are senators, there are people also won senatorial seats that are not in the ruling party. Yes, for example, in my state, somebody from Labour who had never run for office in his entire life won a seat, one of the 3 senatorial seats in my state.
One of the things you have to put into consideration, people from the south side, they seem to be very vocal. You don't get away with things ordinarily you would get away from certain part of the other side of the country, like the northern region. For Lalong, it's true that he was owing civil servants in the state. He had a very bad reputation amongst the people of his state. To an extent, there were certain narrative that went to say that he seemed to favor people from his opposite side of the divide because he wanted favors from the APC. He wanted to become the endorsement. And the fact that he was made Labour Minister was, for some people, a way of securing him and protecting him and making him still relevant. And for the courts to now turn around to give him that senatorial mandate obviously tells you that if he truly wanted to serve the country and if he felt where he was at that time was good enough for him, he shouldn't have, he could as well just say, okay, I'm already serving the Nigerian people and I think I'm okay. So it just tells you all these are done for his own personal goal, personal selfish interest. So you're saying he looked at all his
options and then obviously he picked the senatorial because over his appointment.
So it goes to give credence to what you said, that people felt he wasn't competent. And if you look at what Labour did talk about at the time they had meetings with the federal government where Lalong represented the federal government, they said he made negotiations very difficult. He made them not achieve the aim of the mandate of Mr. President.
Who the organized Labour also said the same of Ngige, former Labour Minister.
No, I attended several meetings with which Ngige was there. Obviously, Ngige was the hardest man you could want to even negotiate with. First of all, he would keep these Labour Party members, the NLC members. He'll keep them for hours, and he comes in. He has this very arrogant way of addressing people, even the media. Most times he came in looking very. You could tell this man he wasn't. He didn't have the heart of the people because the way you speak, the way you stand, your body posture tells you, okay, this man is coming with the mindset to resolve this conflict. But this men never, as if they are chosen because of their hard stance or inhuman, appeal when they come for negotiating issues as such. So I think for Lalong, we wish him the very best. But obviously, the people of Plateau, he doesn't have that kind of love for the people of Plateau because I visit Jos almost every day. I hear comments about the man Lalong. He's one of the governors they wish they never had.
That's not a good place to be. But then we have a few more headlines to look at on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune for you this morning. Panic over recovery of 88.6 billion naira. Debts as controversy rages over Disco's operating license expiry date. We understand that the governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki, is leading his counterparts from across the South, including Delta, Bayelsa, and Ondo, to see how they can, for want of better words, buy back this license and then take charge for the most part of power distribution within those four service areas. There has been a running battle between the governor of Edo State and the person who heads the BEDC. If you follow the news about 3 years ago, you would see a video, footage as even on YouTube, where the governor had these kind of very heated moments with the lady and even expressed disappointment that his aides allowed the lady into the room where the meeting between the government and the leadership of the BEDC, that is the Benin Electricity Distribution Company, was holding. People at that point also speculated that the governor had personal interest in the license of the BEDC and he wanted it at all costs. But others said, look, the governor just wants lights for his people. And he thought the woman, for whatever reason, was standing in the way of making that happen. But whatever it is, every right-thinking governor wants to have a situation where people enjoy power. And people have also talked about some moves being made by the, already made by the state governments to ensure that alternatives are sought and put in place for the people by way of providing power basically for them. And one example that readily comes to mind is the Osiomo power projects, even though we've also seen that being dogged by politics and issues around controversies. But we hope the power sector, as we know it, becomes vibrant and robust again, begins to serve the purpose for which it was even put in place in the first instance. Because we are not so sure how you want to make Nigeria really great when you don't have power. We seem to be building from top All right, we're supposed to have power as the bedrock of development, but we don't have power yet. We're told that we need 21 trillion to drive infrastructure, close the gap, the deficit in infrastructure. We need XYZ billions in dollars to fix healthcare, to fix education, and so on and so forth. Look at the sicknesses, the ailments that kill Nigerians, especially mothers and babies. For most part, people say infrastructure and power. So why are we not staying up all night to fix these two critical sectors and then see how we drive development and even jumpstart growth in the economy? I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Tony, for coming to join me this morning.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah, thank you very much.
Excellent. So I'll be looking at a few more headlines for you before we wind down altogether on the show this morning, but we're taking a break. When we return, you'll meet my guest. Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle, the ASU strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
the legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle, the ASU
The
strike.
Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
For staying with us at the top of the program this morning, I need to mention that we will be looking at something very topical, the idea that the federal government is now putting structures and systems in place to not only drive revenue, but to do so in ways that are very radical, disruptive, and then of course bring overall benefits to Nigeria by way of jacking up the revenue base of the country. As it is today, it's no brainer that Nigeria is in a place where it needs every kobo and every naira. Now, for context, look at how naira continues to weaken against the dollar. Look at how we continue to see a widening gap in infrastructure, how we're not able to fix basics in terms of healthcare, education, and even things that ordinarily Nigerians should take for granted. We've been told that a lot of money has been saved upon the removal of fuel subsidy payments. How or whether or not that has rubbed off on Nigerians in ways that are practical and measurable remains to be seen. In the meantime, however, government says, look, we need to continue to drive erosion. And one of the efforts government says it's putting in place is to ensure that expatriates also bring something significant, something tangible to the table. We are told that this is not a new idea in several other countries, including in Asia and across Europe. But people always argue that Nigeria is always a peculiar environment when it comes to driving certain ideas and the discussion we're having on the show this morning. I'm joined by Professor Biodun Adeniyi of Bayes University. It's a pleasure always to have you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Uyi, for bringing me back.
So I want us to continue this conversation from where we left off the other time. You know, it's exciting when you hear that these are ideas driven in countries like China, Germany, and so on and so forth, but Nigeria is none of those countries. So let's talk about the peculiarities.
Yeah, there has to be peculiarities because nations are recognized, you know, by their different governance system. And the governance system that is in evidence in a particular country will shape the economic and political policy, particularly. And do not forget that in our kind of system, we're still evolving. Sometimes we're even torn between capitalism and socialism, if at all those systems of government, systems of economic administration are still in place. You know, sometimes we call it mixed, sometimes we call it integration. But what we want is progress, you know. But against that background would be why we need, you know, to be continuously creative, adopt the measures that are suitable for our system in the light of our peculiar challenges. And our peculiar challenge now is that, yes, we've been a monocultural economy over the years, solely dependent on oil, which is very, very volatile, very unpredictable. And of course, we've been saying over many years again that I want to diversify our economy such that solid minerals will be beneficial, steel will be beneficial, agriculture, which is also very important, will also be beneficial. But these look long-term measures that they've been mounting over the years and has not been realistic. And that's why, you know, when you are confronted with that kind of reality, then you begin to think about short-term measures. So what are the short-term measures that have been in evidence in many other countries? Will be how to include a lot more people into the contributory net. I don't know how you want to call the contribution. Sometimes they call it differently, but at least people who will be obligated to the state in terms of remittances, you know. And beyond looking at that area, it's also to talk about portfolio investment. And what are portfolio investment? We're talking about momentary investment in liquidity that will increase the liquidity base of the system, ramp up consumption, trigger demand, you know, and once more enhance the multipliers, you know, which will eventually lead to job creation, you know, full employment, and help again in growing the GDP, projected by the present administration to get up to $1 trillion, you know, at some point in the near future. So that's why we keep talking about the need to include the expatriates in the contributory net, away from the $2 million they're probably expected to pay, maybe on arrival in this country, as a fee, you know, for them to be legitimate in the country. You know, that might just be payments to be legitimate in the country, statutory payment that every other foreign national will pay on arrival in the country, in a particular country, or prior to arrival. But what about returns on earnings? What about remittances on earnings while in the country, away from the basic tax, you know, that you and I pay, maybe personal income tax, company income tax, petroleum income profit tax, and all other taxes. And like government has said, or like I've been reading in newspapers, there's no clarity yet, really. But the good thing is that it is still about, you know, engendering the government revenue base, you know, from the soft angle, away from oil, and considering that the resources are declining, considering that we have a huge debt burden, and all income are presently being channeled to the administration of debts, you know, on account of the economics of borrowing that we resorted to in the last 8 years, unfortunately.
Incidentally, that's the concern. You just said we don't have clarity as to what the policy is going to look like. My colleague would say it's a pressure cooker approach. It appears we're in a desperate place. So Nigeria is taking desperate measures. Does that also already say that we probably won't get this right?
No. I had your introduction. By the way, that was an excellent introduction. And of course, I didn't see you using the teleprompter. You were probably ad-libbing, and you got it right. That shows that you are an outstanding presenter. It's not all the time that you see it on set, you know. So having said that, it's not peculiar to Nigeria. It's not the first time we're going to see that kind of measure. You know, about 20 other countries are doing it, you know, and of course, even if you go to some of these sophisticated Western societies, you pay through your nose, you know, to eventually be able to live well in those countries, you know, through your obligations. It can come in different ways, you know, maybe levies, maybe taxes, maybe contributions, I don't know, but in different ways. You find that, yes, you get comfort at the end of the day. You see good roads, you know, good health facilities, security is good, you know, you are confident life is predictable, you are assured of your tomorrow, largely. And you probably may not even need to pray as much as you pray in some other countries with trying.
At least you don't have to pray the whole night.
No, you don't have to pray because you are assured of your tomorrow. The things that you pray for in a trying economy, they are already there in this developed country. That's why they don't pray as much as we pray. You know, but if we get things right, do things appropriately, probably our disposition to prayer will be reduced, even though the Bible tells us that pray without ceasing. But of course, you pray for some better things, maybe for values and virtues, not for miracles, to resolving practical things that good work ethics, good policy directions, good implementation will enable you to achieve.
We understand that this is under the auspices of the Ministry of Interior, using its agency, the Nigerian Immigration Service. Of course, you have Ministry of Finance. I understand you also have the Ministry of Investments and
Trade and Investment, National Planning too.
Exactly. So it's a potpourri of agencies and ministries we're talking about. And what we have seen in the history of Nigeria has been, for the most part, these interagency kind of rivalry. So doesn't that already pose a threat given the trajectory?
It's not going to be enough reason for us not to embark on policy that are salutary. Interagency collaboration is something that is general, like that you find across the world. No agency can work alone. As a professor, I've been part of a resourcing team, you know, talking to participants, facilitating training on the intricacies of interagency collaboration. And I do know sometimes it is not the fault of the agencies. It's not that they deliberately want to have conflict. It's just that when you allow questions around pride and prestige to come in, when you are too territorial, trying to be protective of your own territory, forgetting the bigger picture, then there's going to be a problem. But of course, now we know that we have a big problem, you know, problem of economy, of lack of resources, and of course, it is the reason why the overall leader driving the agencies or that have commands, instruction, influence over all the agencies that will be participating will not have to rein in, you know, letting them know that this is not about being territorial. It's about the bigger picture, the Nigerian picture, you know. And of course, if you have that at the back of your mind, then you minimize conflict, you know, to achieve result, you know. No agency can do it alone. Ministry of, like you rightly said, Ministry of Interior is involved, you know, Immigration Services is involved, National Planning Ministry is involved, Finance is involved. Then of course, there's a government agency in charge of PPP, you know, I've forgotten the name now, CER or something. They have at their office in Area 11. You know, they're probably also behind this. And of course, Nigeria, the citizens will also be interested. You know, so it's a multi-stakeholder project, you know, but of course, centrally driven by one agency with others, you know, becoming interested. Like I said, the important thing is for them to realize that despite whatever it is, you know, we have a president in place, and it is probably the vision, the mission of the president to get this achieved, you know, because of the semi-hopeless situation that we're fast getting into.
What would tell people who probably have the misconception that this threatens jobs that are meant for Nigerian graduates?
No, it's not threatening them. It's not going to even create jobs, you know, because you are trying to bring about a regulation, you know, through enforcing some kind of contribution from the expatriates. So when you bring about regulation, some of them might actually think that they probably shouldn't be here, because there are so many jobs that they are doing that Nigerian citizens can do, Nigerian professionals can do. We've got quite a number of expertise in the Nigerian system. you know those days when we were doing economics at O levels, you know, they will say, what are the reasons responsible for the underdevelopment of Nigeria? And of course, you see shortage of manpower. If you remember, you know, shortage of manpower, all those kind of, we'll start listing it. That's an outdated factor, you know, because we have enough resources in this country. The only problem is that they do not have opportunity to practice. We have many well-trained Nigerian pilots, you know, who are doing something else.
Most of them practice abroad.
They practice abroad. Some of them are here, but they don't have planes to fly. And most of the cockpits are dominated by foreign professionals, you know, foreign pilots. You know, in a situation where we have even qualified Nigerians. You know, for instance, I know 1 or 2 pilots who train in the best aviation schools in the world, in Florida, in the United Kingdom. But they are here in Florida and other one in the United Kingdom. But they came and went for retraining again, and they keep retooling themselves. You know, flying is a very tricky one, so you need to continue to update yourself. And they were updating themselves in advance of getting a job, you know, thinking that they will get a job. But eventually they didn't get it, and they had to go to other things. You know, there are many of such cases with our professionals, engineers, etc., etc. And that's the point we're making, that if we have increased regulation, not in a way to disrespect the foreign professionals, not in a way to say that we do not appreciate their contribution, not also to say that they could exit, even where there are reasons for them to stay. You know, I think a lot more Nigerians will get included into the job bracket.
We've seen the back and forth between the CBN and airline companies. In this country over the years, you know, right from the days we had former President Buhari. Today we hear they have resolved it. Tomorrow we're back to fighting and so on and so forth. What was the fighting about? Inability to repatriate funds. Have we been able to clear that backlog, and have we been able to deal with the issues that got us stuck?
No, there are so many factors responsible for that. First, you look at the liquidity squeeze. You know, if you are not earning income, how would you be liquid? How will you get the cash? You know, when people have genuinely earned money in your country doing business, you know, and they keep them in your banks, and they want to collect it, they cannot have it. Of course, they will exit, you know, because nobody brings in capital without hoping to get some return on investment. You know, that's right in business. And when you have a huge transnational company like Emirates investing heavily in this country, you know, having flights from Lagos and Abuja, and with many Nigerians, you know, going to Dubai every day on holiday, on medical reasons, on educational reasons, and for so many other reasons, you know, you expect that the kind of cash that they are leaving behind is a lot. And by the time they want to get it, they cannot be obliged with their funds, genuine funds, illegal, legitimate funds, you know. So you may not be able, we may not be able to put them down on account of their protestation or disavowal with the development, you know. But what we need to do is to look inwards and say, what can we do to increase our liquidity such that we can meet their forex demand. I do not forget, you know, Glasso, GSK, one company, GlaxoSmithKline, yes, you know, just left Nigeria, just exited Nigeria. And there's another French company that also exited Nigeria, even recently. And that's on the back of many other foreign transnationals that left, you know, Cadbury, Michelin. Some of them are not even living back to their mother countries, but they are living to sister African countries, you know, because of problems of electricity, problem of insecurity, problem of inability to repatriate their funds, you know. So these are compounding economic problems, you know, that government has to be ingenious in solving. And one way to do it is just, of course, to find ways of triggering the multipliers, boost production, and enhance manufacturing, you know, continue with the deliberate effort to diversify, stimulate the agricultural sector, which is also another important sector in this country, considering the avalanche of resources at our disposal. Then solid minerals, the Minister of Solid Minerals is lately becoming very, very dynamic and vibrant, you know, and speaking to the issues and taking steps that will think and can help, you know, make the sector very robust, considering the potentials we have in this sector. What about steel development? Over the years, we've been talking about Ajaokuta Steel Development. The other day, I told you that Ajaokuta Steel Company, I told you how magnificent that structure is. Imagine built over 30-something years ago, and yet it's looking moribund, wasted billions of dollars. No nation will allow that to happen. You know, so if we have government thinking positively about these opportunities that are wasting away, then of course we can begin to imagine that we'll get out of our present quagmire. And that's what we expect President Tinubu to do. For me, I think in the realm of including expatriates into the contributing net is one measure that is welcomed, other than, in addition to his deliberate attempt, to woo foreign investors. Already maybe on paper, yes, but of course there's still hope in it, there's still promise in it. We've had that about 14 billion is coming in from India, about 5 to 6 billion is coming from Saudi Arabia. He's gone to Germany to talk to them as well. Maybe at some point we'll begin to see the manifestations of or the fulfillment of some of these promises, if not in the long term, but maybe in the short term, in the area of portfolio investment.
Incidentally, on a very sad note, Nigeria is still grappling with so much with regards to power, electricity, and then you see the infrastructure, the decay, the gap in infrastructure. How do we drive, if you like, change the narrative, if we're bringing these expatriates into this country? These are people who, for the most part, have built capacity in critical sectors over the years. Then you bring them to a country where you can't guarantee them power. They can travel by roads, maybe 50, 60 kilometers. Doesn't that pose a whole lot of challenge?
No, you see, sometimes investment is not about the presence of peace. It's very important for you to have peace before capital can come in. But there's the reason why an investor may want to invest in Somalia, in Afghanistan, for instance, even in war-torn Palestine. There's some kind of investment that you can go and do in those places.
In the face of conflict.
In the face of conflict, but we're not at those levels yet anyway. So I'm just saying that it's not all doom, as we might sometimes want to be tempted to see it. It's not all doom. There are still hope. There's a reason why some people, it's not all Nigeria, not all sections of Nigeria, all regions that is completely in crisis. There are marginal peace. There's marginal peace in some sections, and of course, you can take advantage of those sections. There is marginal peace in some sectors as well. You can take advantage of those sectors. And over the years, we have never had complete peace. Even in the Niger Delta, we have had the militants ravaging the place, but it has not completely driven away the oil majors. They are still there, making profit, doing business. So it's about courage and vision and the mission that you have and the determination of the government to protect you as well. So yes, we know that we have to work on insecurity. Yes, we know that it is not all right. We also know that the optics are not nice, but it shouldn't stop us, from reinvesting our hope in the country, especially when you see that some huge multi-billion-dollar firms, are still thriving in this country, if not in the oil and gas sector. You find them in the construction sector. You find them in the manufacturing sector. And they're not doing badly. So many of these people have in their employ a lot of expatriates. Some of them are not even as skilled as you ordinarily expect them to be. They're just technicians, They are artisans, but they are brought in because
of practical skills.
In practical skills, with some skills. They are brought in because of the level of confidence that the employers think they have in them, much more than they will have in the average Nigerian equivalent. So how do we change the narrative? That's the discussion that is very, very important for us to focus on. The attitude of the Nigerian person to work. How do we change the attitudes? So that when you have the opportunity, you just put in your best. Such that your employer will have confidence in you and be able to invite you again, because he didn't just invite you to work on the basis of emotions or sentiments or because he likes your face. He has invited you because of the contribution he thinks you can make to the growth of his concern, so that he can be successful at the level of making profit and staying afloat.
The countries we just mentioned a while ago have actually implemented these kind of initiatives. They are advanced on many fronts. Let's talk about data, because you need data to do some of these things. For example, Nigeria is a country where data doesn't seem to be taken seriously, even in the healthcare sector. I mean, as critical as the healthcare sector. So how do we also address the challenge of data?
It's another area that is very critical. Presently, we don't even know the number of population. We rely most of the time on United Nations projections, you know, and we are told now that we are slightly in excess of 200 million.
Sometimes we hit 206 million.
Yes, you know, so it's a problem, no doubt, you know. But again, we have to keep trying, keep looking at the figures that we have, working with them, and hoping that we'll get things right at the appropriate time. Recently, I heard that National Population Commission, you know, was planning to do another census until it was postponed. You know, it was to come immediately after the election, but because Nigerians were activity wary, government thought it right to put it on hold, and because of the humongous amount involved in a state where we don't have money. And of course, it was even put on hold after about 800 billion had been invested in it.
Almost $1 trillion.
Yeah, and that's the problem we're talking about, blocking leakages and waste. You know, we just like to waste money. We waste more money than we actually use for the good of the people in this country. And when we're talking about waste, we're not talking about misapplication. We're also talking about misappropriation. You know, where people carry this money, put them in the private vaults in their homes, or move them abroad, and the money don't serve any economic purpose. You know, but in the case of data, you know, for expatriates, it's not very difficult to gather. You know, some of these people are phenotypically different from you. There are ways in which you can do it, and of course, some of them are not anyway. But projections say they're about 150,000 to 200. And of course, do not forget, there's already a levy that they are paying. They are being registered by Immigration Services, and of course, many of them too wants to be seen as legal. They hardly want to run foul of the law. So it shouldn't be a problem for you to get their data and to make projections on how much you think that you can realize if you put them into the contribution net. And already projections are already saying that between 1.5 to $2 billion can be raised annually if you implement the program very well. And if government gets $1.5 to $2 billion annually, you can imagine how much that we contribute over the years and to the budgeting process, you know, and of course how much it will help in alleviating or mitigating the quest or the need for about 3 trillion over 25 to 30 years. You know, in the bids, you know, to cover the gap in infrastructure that the nation is presently witnessing. We are presently infrastructurally deficient to the tune of about 3 trillion, and of course, no nation grows without infrastructure. When we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about road, rail, you know, sea, ICT, bridges, etc., etc. All these things are supposed to be in place to stimulate economic activities, engender confidence, and make life much more predictable. Fear will reduce. Economics is about the intangible. It's about building confidence, and that's why when economic projections are being made, people talk about we talk about ceteris paribus. You know, if all things are equal, and if all things are not equal, you do not expect projections to be to materialize. You know, and making things equal also includes, you know, ensuring that the atmosphere is okay, and the atmosphere also includes infrastructural development.
Look at what happened with China. I mean, Chinese companies in Nigeria. We've heard about cases of exploitation and so on and so forth. We've heard, we've even seen some of these Chinese executives being taken to Nigerian courts over allegations of exploitation. Closer to home, South African companies in Nigeria, we hear similar stories.
Yeah.
Is it like our system is so weak, everybody comes in here and exploits us?
Yeah, you know, it also comes back to, again, to a weak mechanism for regulation. You know, the laws are there, but they are simply implemented in the breach, you know, and that's unfortunate. That's why you see that people do what they cannot do ordinarily in their country, they do it here. Just look at a simple example of traveling. By the time you land in Heathrow, you see the difference, you know. Landing in Heathrow, approaching immigration, you see how people become ordered. Everybody's on the queue, and who betide you if you want to jump the queue, you know. I mean, you just organize yourself, you know that this place, the laws are going to be implemented. If you flout it, you get into trouble. But come back to Nigeria. Get to the immigration, you see people trying to jump. You know, why they start abusing themselves because they know that, you know, one thing or the other can get done, and you jump the queue, and people try to favor you because you're a big man or because they know you. You know, nepotism start coming in, and that's why we also talk about new patrimonialism in a situation where our governance system is run not on the basis of merit, but on the basis of ethnicism, religiosity, regionalism, you know, and such other mundane consideration. You know, so the laws are important. Again, it will lead us to the question of institutional weaknesses. If the institutions are strong, you know, and one institution that needs to be strong is the law, even as a virtual institution. If it is strong, working effectively, of course, we know that people will comply, because the human being does not actually wants to be free. He doesn't want to run into trouble. But of course, there's a weakness that people are exploiting. The argument has also been made about corruption. Nigeria is not corrupt because we are innately corrupt. Nigerians are corrupt because the system makes corruption possible. Some other countries too, the temptation is there, but the system, you know, is restrictive. And that's why, again, it leads us to the argument that to deal with corruption in this country is not about preachments. It's not about sermonizing. It's about strengthening the institutions, you know, to minimize the ability of the individual, you know, to pervert or circumvent processes and procedures. We can continue to talk about this until tomorrow, because it's a fact out there that government has also tried through multinational agencies like the World Bank to develop reform agencies such that our laws will work. You know, we have plenty of reform agencies, you know, but to what extent will you say they have contributed to the reform exercise, you know, to injecting value, virtue, cardinal objectives into the system? You know, they are there, you know, but again, you just begin to think that, you know, the value they are adding is not commensurate with the desire and investment, you know, in the initially put into them, you know, or that is continuously being the effort that is continuously being injected into them. And when I'm talking about this reform agency, I'm talking about the Bureau of Public Procurement, the ICPC, Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, the EFCC, Economics and Financial Crimes Crime Commission. You know, many of them like that. The Code of Conduct.
I think that we have the Fiscal Responsibility
Act. So, to what extent, you know, all these agencies they go through training, they know what their mandates are, you know, but the system is really problematic. And that's why, if you read the book by Professor Ademola Adebo on corruption recently, he made the argument, which I agree with absolutely, that to deal with corruption in this country is not about this knee-jerk, episodic, once-in-a-while arrest of individuals. You arrest them, prosecute them, and sanction them. It's not the solution. You know, you can continue with this ad infinitum, and the problem will still with us. The problem of corruption is actually systemic. It is endemic. You know, the structures are innately corrupt. So you have to deal with the structure from the beginning. You know, from the bottom. You know, it's not a top-down approach; it's a bottom-up approach. You know, and if you don't deal with it, just touching it at the top, you continuously be peppering the crack and not dealing with it sometimes.
Incidentally, Prof, as we wind down now, with regards to these expatriates idea that the federal government is now pushing, you realize there's a long-term element in it. We incidentally and sadly too, Nigeria is a country where after one government leaves office, the government that comes in doesn't seem to care so much about what projects or programs they were pursuing. What can we do at this, if you like, this stage where, I mean, this embryonic state where you can say, okay, in the next 10 years we are sure there's a guarantee that this project will continue to run?
If the project is let me tell you one thing, it's a secret, don't tell anybody.
Even though we're on live television.
Yeah, no, you see, one thing that every government is concerned about is public opinion. There's no government, even military governments, they are concerned about what the people are thinking. Hardly would you see, even the strongest man, so they are concerned about the public opinion. You know, they want to ingratiate themselves to the people, to the citizens, as much as possible. You know, but if a policy, you know, is in tune with the desire of the people, if the people see that this policy is working and they receive it, you know, and they salute the government because of it, no government will come afterwards and begin to think that it should scrap it, you know, most of the time. Because that's why we say sometimes governments try to be politically correct or they play to the gallery.
Yeah.
Even they take decisions not just because it is right, but because they also see it as right. And there are some wrong decisions that they might take, not because they do not know that it is wrong, but they do not have any other way to go other than just doing that wrong path.
Circumstances.
Under peculiar circumstances. And that's why decision making, policy making can be very fluid. You know, it's dependent on existing contemporary circumstances. You know, so I do not see any government coming to say that they're going to do away with it, you know, because of one reason or the other, especially if it just with the people. Right. And if it helps in generating income, you know. We have had policies that were initiated by the government of President Olusegun Obasanjo, for instance, and of course they are still dirty today. Nobody will think about putting them away because they are good for the system. Even by President Yar'Adua as well, President Jonathan, President Buhari, if they are good, no government will touch it, you know. But of course, I know your fear, I appreciate it, because hardly do we realize in this part of the world that government is a continuum. And we hardly realize it, and that's the tragedy of our situation. We politicize everything, you know, and you see it more when there are hostile takeovers of government. I mean, when a government comes, that government is different from, you know, the previous one with respect to political affiliation. He thinks that he wants to diminish the importance or the relevance of the previous policy before he or she came in. With an unfortunate development, you know, we should learn to distance ourselves from policy directions, realizing that everything, most of the time, is couched, you know, constructed in the interest of the citizens and its prosperity, sustainability of the nation.
Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, thank you for coming to talk to us about this issue.
My pleasure.
We're taking a quick break again, everyone. When we return, we'll just look at a few more headlines for you, and that will be a full cycle on the program. Just stay with us. Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies to, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from.
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
We struggled as a strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
Let's take a look at a few more headlines for you this morning before we get together. But this time it's the Punch newspaper we're looking at. All right, big story on the front page of today's Punch newspaper says NNPCL ends fuel import December 2024, projects 4.5 trillion naira revenue. Fuel importation, shipping costs, port levies will stop, say Imman NNPCL boss. Kyari insists on December deadline for PH refinery repairs. Speaker demands privatization. This is quite a complex discussion to have, but we all know what it has been like with regards to petroleum sector. All right, but let's see a story just beneath that. NAF decorates 12 combat pilots vow stop time for terrorists. Above the nameplates, story there has a picture of the vice president. FG states plan 18 million agri jobs, $1.5 billion funds. Government to fish out prison warders aiding Boko Haram. Tinubu assigns bill on local military equipment production. That's the Deacon bill, which we brought to you on our news this morning. That's the AM news. But let's see the fruits of today's Punch newspaper. Cash crunch worsens, food spending drops by 3 trillion naira. Of course, inflationary concerns there. Ondo police arrests housemaid's son over killing a bus. Jusun, Oshun chapter on coalition course over anti-CJ protest. All of that has been playing out in Oshun State with the governor also one of the, if you like, part of the cast, if we're talking about the movie now, in that case. But it appears the protagonist is the CJ of Osun State. Okay. But then we want to, on that note, take a look at the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. We begin with the headlines above the nameplates of today's Daily Trust. Kano residents panic as APC search for mass rally tomorrow. What's the rally about? Of course, we understand that Governor Abba Yusuf has been removed now by the Supreme Court, so there's a closure to that effect. But then we want to see the Kaduna, want to see what's happening in Kaduna. It says Kaduna farmers in dilemma as bandits impose levies before harvest. We've seen these stories again and again about Kaduna State, about Zamfara State, in some cases in recent times about Katsina State. No matter how much of truth or falsehood you have in it, it's a wake-up call for Nigerians, in particular for the military, because it's obscene, not only weird, but embarrassing and a disgrace for people to live freely, who are supposed to live freely in their own communities, to now be asked to pay to not government, whether local, state or federal, but a bunch of criminals, just so they are able to have access to their farms. All right, it's as serious as it comes. But one more headline from Daily Trust this morning. Alleged terrorism financing, FG orders probe of correctional service officers. What big story do we have on the Daily Trust today? It says, war on Gaza, Israeli-Hamas ceasefire begins today. We understand that ceasefire is scheduled to be for 4 days in the first instance. All right. Hopefully that will open up room for further discussions with regards to how lasting peace can be found. In the meantime, we also know that one of the conditions that Israel has placed is that at least the hostages taken by Hamas be released. And we understand about 50 of them will now be released as part of this deal to have a 4-day ceasefire, and let's see what happens in the days and weeks after that. But that story has riders as well, 4 riders on that story. 50 Israeli hostages, 150 Palestinians for release. Israeli forces launch fresh attack ahead truce. Nigeria, 7 others reject selective application of international laws. West, Israel not ready for 2-state solution. That's a Palestinian envoy there talking. But if you take a look at the left corner of the front page of the Daily Trust today, you see 3 more headlines there. Nigeria drifting in health sector. That's according to NEC. That came up from yesterday's meeting of the NEC. Okay, you find details for yourself on page 4 of today's Daily Trust newspaper. Man backs life imprisonment for sodomy in Jigawa. Kogi freezes state local government accounts. Okay, it's a big story across newspapers this morning. 2 more papers to go, but this time we would like to first take a look at the Guardian newspaper for you. Let's see what the Guardian has got now. The big story says high OPEX, harsh environment, hobble industrial revival jobs. Right there on the front page. Okay, it's a big story. Pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian. Okay, Nigeria ranks 144 out of 163 in safest country ranking for 2023. Is that a good place to be? Out of 163, we have come up to be 144. What it means is we're doing better than just 19 countries out of 163. It shows that we have so much of work to do, and the earlier we start telling ourselves the truth about this reality and making frantic, sincere, consistent efforts, all right, vigorous efforts to fix the problems, the better for us as a country, as a people, and of course as a government. But then we have a few more headlines on the front page of the Guardian for you this morning. Military deactivates 50 illegal oil refining sites, arrests 51 suspects. All right, you find that on Metro page 8 of the Guardian newspaper. Jega Babache, others reflect on INEC 2023 elections amid fresh appeal court verdicts. Israel-Hamas war, death toll of Palestinians, 14,200, says ambassador. Reps panel probes 62 billion HIV/AIDS intervention funds. Nigeria loses $10 billion yearly to imported welders. Minister Lammers. What do we do to fix that? I mean, that's job flight, if you like. Okay. But our last paper this morning is the Leadership Friday. Above the nameplate, one has a picture of the VP, as the Vice President, Kashim Shettima. Economic Council melds emergency budget for flood disasters. Economic Councils, that is the National Economic Council, chaired by the Vice President, melds emergency budget for flood disasters. Wike to partner Cuba, Mexico on investments in FCT. Omonile, Magodo residents seek someone loose intervention. Read it up on page 54, page 14, I should say, of the Leadership newspaper today. Appeal courts, NNPP wants justices probed over verdicts. Challenges judgment on Kano governorship at Supreme Court. Anxiety as APC, NNPP fixed protest for Saturday. Inuwa solely affirmed as Gombe, Nasarawa governors. FG orders probe of prison officers with regards to terrorism financing. Troops arrest 198 terrorists, kill 99. That's a story you'd like to see on page, page 10 of Leadership Friday. Bauchi approves 100 billion naira for 16 roads, 2 flyovers. That's also on page, let's see where that is now, on page 10 as well. Okay. That's the much we can bring you this morning with regards to the papers. Thank you, everyone, for watching our program today. Remember, as always, that the views of our guests on all of our programs are their opinions. But let's talk about crime for a second. In the FCT, we understand that while the police and other agencies whose business is to address security concerns are hard at work every day, all day, these criminals have evolved new strategies, new methods of catching prey, of finding victims across the FCT. We're particular about the FCT because this is our host city and it is the center of this country, whether it's in terms of administration or several other factors that are pivotal to the growth, development, unity, and peace of our dear nation, Nigeria. Of course, we understand crime has no respect or no regard for geography, or for gender, or for religion. We were saying if we can get it right within the FCT, there's a pretty good chance we can replicate that across the states of this country. Our partner correspondent, Abdullahi, did something very special for us a couple of weeks ago, which focuses on the one chance phenomenon, what the dynamics are, how this bunch of criminals operates, and what government, or if you like, the security forces themselves are doing to also ensure that these people are caught in their own tracks. I'm Uyag Mofwegbe. Thank you for watching.
An apparently peaceful traffic situation can turn into a nightmarish experience with the activities of the popular but ignoble criminals called One Chance. They are violent criminals who disguise as either commercial drivers or as passengers. The trick is to shout, one chance, giving the impression that the vehicle needs only one passenger to move. But jump in and you jump into a pile of miseries. Kabiru Adamu is a security consultant and confirms that this pattern of crime has taken an alarming dimension.
It is a common occurrence in most city centers. In Abuja, as an example, it's very difficult for you to go to any space where there are a couple of persons ranging from 3 up until 10 that you will not find at least 1 to 2 to 3 persons that have not been victims of One Chance, as long as the persons are using commercial vehicles.
So I entered cab, hailing Papi.
Chidinma is a young mother. She had a terrible and pathetic experience in the hands of the criminals. Chidinma was dropped by her sister right about here at around 8 o'clock in the evening. A Mazda car driven by a man and one other passenger at the back pulled over and hastily picked her. Destination, Mpape. But the journey was doomed because a set of horrible things started happening at the inception of the trip.
Merely I entered. The passenger by my left, was behaving as if he was collecting his balance from the driver. So I felt comfortable. I guess they did that so that I wouldn't have to notice what was going to go on. So immediately after he collected that balance, the next thing he did was to stretch his hands towards my side, and hair was on my neck while hair was trying to stop me from opening the door by my right. So as I tried to open the door by my right, they were shouting, "You better cooperate. You know, go cooperate, but you won't die. You won't die this night. She said, go feel come out from this car. This is go feel come out. You know, go feel come out from this car." They were beating me. The first person that hit me was the man in front. So he punched me with, I don't know whether it was a ring on his finger or a rod. Mainly he punched me. That was when here, the blood started oozing from here. So I was in the pool drinking my blood. Then they now told me, lie down. Okay, lie down. No, go lie down, ba. So I was struggling. They've collected my stuffs. They've collected my bags at that time. I didn't have my bag with me. So they were telling me, no, go lie down, ba. So I thought they wanted to rape me as they were telling me to lie down on the floor of the car. So as I tried to lie down on that floor, the one by my side too now slapped me, and he tried to strangle me too. That was where this marks came out from. So he was strangling me and telling me, no, you go die this night. Maybe you no want cooperate. You go die this night. You go die this night.
Chidinma was lucky to escape alive because she did not fit the correct profile of the perfect victim the criminals were searching for their sinister intentions.
By the time they were done beating me, it wasn't like the madam, you know what you go do now? You go cut your breast. I said, okay, sir. He now said, do you have kids? I said, yes, I have kids. He just kept quiet. The next thing I saw was that he told me, okay, oh yeah, get up.
Alone in the night.
This young lady was also lucky because she survived and agreed to share her experience with us.
I've been attacked in this beggar before. I was hit from behind. My phones and everything were collected. And it took me years to be able to stand in beggar and get a car and pick up a cab.
In a daring display of impunity, most of the criminals move around with POS machines for ease of stealing money out of the bank accounts of their victims. Security experts explain that this is very possible, especially with the emergence of new financial outfits who ignore the vigorous security check on customers before opening customer accounts.
A lot of the instances that we've monitored, they actually use the financial systems. Now, the reason for this is commonplace. Number one, we do not have a national database for individuals, Nigerians actually. And more importantly, even the banking system has not put in place infrastructure to reduce the possibility of this from happening. And then secondly, where it happens, to trace the perpetrators, arrest them, and then prevent further crime.
Abuja is Nigeria's seat of government. It is also a bubbling cosmopolitan city that attracts people from every part of Nigeria and even abroad who come mostly in search of economic opportunities. But like many emerging cities facing the challenges of growth, crime has become a major issue. The June 2023 edition of Nigeria Security Report for Beacon Intel, a security consulting firm, shows an increase in crime in not just Abuja but other major Nigerian cities. The FCT Police Command says it is doing its best to fight crime in the territory in order to protect the security and welfare of citizens.
We have created a tactical squad called Anti-One Chance, which they have been charged with the responsibility of these one chance activities to wipe away, in conjunction with the DPOs as well. The DPOs are doing on the divisional level, and this squad that I mentioned, Anti-One Chance, has been deployed also to each division.
The FCT Police Public Relations Officer says the police needs the cooperation of the victims and other citizens in order to tackle this despicable crime called one chance.
Sometimes these modus, they change their modus. Though we've identified the modus they are using, but when they know we identify them, they also change their modus. So when if you find yourself as a victim, it's only wise and advisable that you report these incidences to the security agencies.
I actually did not believe that they could do anything about it. That was why I didn't report to them.
There were law enforcement agents that do not see this crime as a major crime. We've been in instances where we've monitored this development on behalf of our clients. We will report the cases by providing the telephone numbers that were used in the crime, the account numbers that were used in the crime. The response you get from the law enforcement is that they have bigger challenges. And this is the effort they will use in stopping this is not worth the benefit.
Victims survive and injuries are treated, but the emotional scar takes a very long time to heal.
It took me months or if not years to actually recover. And psychologically, everything around me now, even if I enter a cab now, I will start to be conscious of where I am because of everybody around me is a suspect.
The one that was repeatedly beating me, I didn't see the one in the front, his face, but the one at the back, I kind of saw his face. So when I see someone that looks like that person, I'll be like, are you sure it's not this man that beat me that night?
Kabiru Adamu says commuters should avoid flagging vehicles along the road. Instead, approved and designated motor parks should be used. Anjum Abdullahi.
Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
The struggle with ASU strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.